I always forget that like the people aren't going to pop up on video, and we just get to see them in the pit and like that.
They're here. They're coming.
They really like us.
We're
Happy
probably
birthday.
expecting about 50 or so folks today.
Nice.
Yeah, it's people rolling in.
Happy Thursday, everybody.
Happy Thursday.
So typically JH asks like, where are you all calling in from? Which is like a good question. But I think top of mind for me this week, for those of us in the States, is what are you cooking next Thursday? What is your dish? Tell us.
I thought you were going to ask where are they going, but what are you
Favorite-
thinking is even better.
Yeah,
Except Paolo is hungry right now, so maybe let's not talk about food.
Well, I'm more curious than Paolo is hungry, so
Sorry, Paolo.
sorry, Paolo.
You
So,
also,
what was that, JH?
Since there's also these prompts of if you're interested in sharing anything else about yourself, in addition to your family recipes.
That don't have to be family recipes.
True. Yeah, I'm not seeing. Yeah, please use the chat. We'll keep tabs on it, and there's also the Q&A that you can throw questions in. So we'll try to field ones in any relevant section real time as we go, but other ones that are don't fit into some of the talk track we have, we'll just cover at the end. So please take advantage of the Q&A if you have any questions for us.
We've got one food mentioned so far. Lucas is saying he's making brisket. Also a reminder, if you're chatting, feel free to chat to everyone, not just the 5 of us here.
Yes.
Sarah is saying pies, 3, apple, pecan, pumpkin. Classic.
It's a nice mix of pies.
I'm a pecan person first and foremost.
Ooh, I go pumpkin for sure.
It's just the the texture thing
Pumpkin.
for me.
I get that. You like the crunch.
I like the crunch, yeah.
Yeah. Nice.
We've got a couple eaters, which is important. Like you can't have chefs without equal to eat.
Critical
Lauren, I
role.
knew we'd be on the same page there.
Rebecca's
Ooh,
asking
oh no.
pecan or pecan. I don't even remember what I said.
You said pecan, so there's actually 3 if you add your other interpretation.
I went rogue. Classic.
I do feel like I say it differently most times I say it. I don't know that I actually have one. Like,
True. Change it up.
No, I'm so terrified I'm going to say it wrong. I'm not going to say it. I'm just going to spell it.
Oh, Matt. No, Matt. Cool to see some familiar names in here.
I think Matt's answering that your researcher's superpower question, scaling new teams to do research. It's quite a superpower, Matt. Clearly in the right business.
Yeah, one many of our fellow people in the room are always looking to do, so that's exciting.
And we'll give it 60 more seconds and then we will kick off.
Okay. Sounds good.
I'm just making turkey. Just like sounds boring as I say it, but
You're just making a turkey for yourself, or are you like participating and making turkey for other people?
Making
You're
turkey
just
for,
gonna eat the turkey?
making turkey for 18, which I'm a little intimidated.
Wow.
Oh, nice.
How many pounds is your turkey?
I think 20, right, pound per person.
All right.
Yeah, overwhelming. Team, it is 12:35 on the West Coast and other times elsewhere. We will get underway. Thank you all for being here. This is our 4th quarterly product talk, initially envisioned as an opportunity to connect with you all, our beloved researchers, to share with you information about what we've released recently, what we're working on now, and what our thoughts are for future outcome-based work for the product and engineering teams. And also just an opportunity for us to hear from you in real time, your thoughts, questions, hopes, dreams, feedback. To the latter, we love your questions. but we really like your questions in the Zoom Q&A feature and not in the chat. In fact, if you ask us a question in the chat, we will direct you to ask it again in the Q&A, which allows all to see it and allows you all to upvote those questions. I am Tucker. I'm our VP of Revenue. I've gotten to work with many of you here today, but unfortunately not all, hopefully in the future. And I will turn it over to the newest addition to this crew, Zoe, so that she can introduce herself.
Hi, everyone. I'm Zoe. Yes, I am a new face on Product Talks. I joined User Interviews just a few weeks ago as a product marketer. So yeah, really great to meet you all and really looking forward to engaging with you all in future Product Talks and some other forums too. Kick it over to Hope.
Thanks, Zoe. Hi, everyone. I know most of you, hopefully, who have joined today. My name is Hope Supernick. I am the Director of Customer Success and get to be a great advocate working closely with all of our research teams. So thank you for being here. Always happy to take your questions and comments following up on this chat. Hello, do you want to take it over?
Yeah, hey all. Paul Apley. I'm a product manager here at User Interviews. I think I saw some names coming in. I've talked to a number of you in the research that we do to figure out the work that we're building. So I'm super excited to talk about some of that work that we've released recently and some of the work that's upcoming. JH, I think you're the last one on that page.
Yes. Hi, JH. I run the product team here at User Interviews. Been at all these previous product talks. So if anyone's been here along for all four, you've probably seen me around before. Zoe, did we want to hit some of these recent milestones just to call some fun stuff out before we jump into the bulk of the presentation?
Sure, let's do it. If you want to go up one.
There it is.
Yeah, just some fun stuff that we've been thinking about and celebrating as an org recently. We had a rebrand, so if you've been in the app recently or visited our marketing website, you'll see we've got a new look and feel, which is very exciting. Also, we gathered in Denver as a company a couple of weeks ago for our first retreat or offsite, since the pandemic. So it's really great to meet everyone in person. And during that time, we celebrated a couple of other milestones. We've hit 50,000 projects launched on User Interviews and 300,000 completed sessions. So just some of the cool stuff that we've been celebrating recently.
Yeah, those numbers still make my head spin. I shared a post at some point, but the day I joined years ago, we had 7 projects that day. So it's crazy to just think of how much things have changed in that time. So it's been cool to see. Appreciate you all coming on the journey with us. There we go. I think we're back. Cool. So we've covered the welcome and introductions. Now we're getting into some of the new and upcoming features that we have. We've kind of organized these in 5 different areas, and we'll unpack it from there. But faster participant review, obviously really important. Improving how we find the right participants for B2B studies in particular. Some additional work we've done on further reducing fraud, which we think is already in a good spot, but always a focus for us. Improving a couple things with our hub product. So making sure that researchers are getting great response to the invitations they're sending out, and then making it easier to make sure you're compliant with any privacy regulations you need to keep in mind. And then we're going to give a bit of a look into where we'll be focused in 2022, and then obviously answer any questions that come up along the way. Sound good? All right, let's get into it. One thing I did want to just hit really quickly before we get into this, because you'll see these outcomes kind of used to organize those 5 topics, is we are very outcome focused, probably relatively familiar to this audience. We do this because we identify areas that we think are worth delivering impact in, both for you all, but for us as a business as well, and then give ourselves some space to go do that research and discovery to figure out the best way to drive those outcomes forward. And so we try to avoid a very prescriptive roadmap where we're portraying that we have more certainty in what to build than we actually do. And so we like this outcome framing. And so we have 3 of them currently. And we have one around matching that's very core to Recruit. And so we think about this as quickly and efficiently getting the right participants for every research project. And this is really like the marketplace dynamic where obviously the researchers come in and describe what they need, but then we have all these participants who are eager to get into studies that are interesting and relevant to them as well. So how do we do that in a way that's working for both parties? And we think about this, or we have thought about it this year, largely around speed. I think that's a good way of the system's working well if we can make that match quickly. And so that's one area we've been focused in. The other we call logistics, which is basically, hey, you have great participants, what now? And there's a lot of steps to actually making that research happen in terms of identifying who you want to move forward, how they schedule themselves, how they actually complete those sessions. And so we look at this really from that step of qualified to completed and that whole funnel and look for opportunities in there. This is where Paulo will be spending a lot of time taking you through some stuff today, which has been really fun to work on. And then the last area, Hub, which is our other kind of primary product offering, is just how do we make that the best possible solution for conducting research with your own users? We know that's a huge pain point for teams for various reasons. It can be access to your own users. Sometimes, you have sales or account managers who are a little cagey there. Other times it's targeting. How do I find people who have taken this action in the last week or two? Because they're the people I need to talk to. And there's a lot of interesting problems for us to solve there. And so we think about that purely from just like an active Hub user perspective, like how many researchers are using Hub and getting value from it. And that's the outcome we're rallying around there. And then we do this, basically, we have a team of people that own each of these areas. So a sneak preview on 2022 is we're going to be adding some more outcomes because the team is growing, which is really exciting, but we'll get to that later. But to start, we have logistics. So this is the area that Paulo works in and specializes in. As he mentioned, he's talked to some of you about this area, and we'll let him take you through a lot of the exciting stuff they've been doing there.
Yeah, excited. If we flip to the next one, JH, we can talk about our focus. So I think obviously selecting and getting great quality participants is such a big part of conducting good research, about coming away with great insights and about making better decisions. Part of that is what JH talked about, the matching side of things. How do we quickly find good participants for the research projects that you're running? The other side of that is, once we've found potential participants, how do we actually go through the process of selecting which ones to talk to, understanding which ones are ideal, and then making the sort of final decision about which ones to include in the research. So all the work that I'm going to talk about is really about making that process easier, helping researchers do that more quickly, so that they can get to talking to the participants and getting the feedback more effectively. So we can go to the next one. So the first thing that we are looking at here is filtering, and that's really about finding participants quickly. When we talked to researchers, when we do our own research, I think we saw a couple of things happening. One, we saw researchers were pulling the participant information out of our system. They were using tools like Excel, Airtable, Sheets to really cut the information in ways that let them find who was ideal. We also know that even if a participant qualifies, so they meet all the initial criteria, there are often other criteria that matter for researchers to make the decision. That might be criteria where they're making a decision, where they're trying to fill a quota, when you're trying to balance a project as a project continues. So we know there are a lot of pieces of information that get used to make the decision, but all of this was leading to wasted effort in researchers being able to find those participants in our system. And so filtering is sort of a feature in order to help do that work more quickly. So we released mono filtering, which I'll talk about in a second, and then we're testing multi-filtering now. So part of this is fully launched already, and the other part of it we hope to be launching soon. Mono filtering is about filtering the pool on one thing at a time. So either filtering on a characteristic like gender or income. The other one is about filtering on a screener question. So the answer to a screener question, a specific answer to a screener question. And we've seen really great results in the work, the mono filtering release that we've already done. We've seen an increase in participants being approved. So in the same amount of work, reviewing the same number of participants, researchers are able to approve more. So less review per approval, which we're really excited about. And we've also seen the speed at which this is done. We've seen a lot more projects hit their target approvals in 24 hours. So part of that definitely attributable to the work the matching team is doing, but we also think researchers are finding these participants much more quickly. So really excited about what we saw on mono filtering. And as part of that, we decided to do further work, which is multi-filtering. And this is really about layering together different criteria. So you can mix and match characteristics, multiple answers to screener questions, or either or. So you can see in the example picture on the left here, we've got a researcher who's basically trying to look for a participant who answered that question with a month ago and someone who identifies as non-binary. And so really trying to get specific with the participants they're looking for and in order to speed up this review process more. So excited for that.
I saw a question in the chat that I'll just take quickly about, is this for just Recruit or for Hub? It is for both. The only difference there is that we don't have the structured characteristic data on your own users in Hub. So the Hub filtering is much more around just the screener survey results, but you can filter in both types of projects. Cool, but a lot of excitement around this one. We've been excited about it too, so good to see that that's shared. The team did some really great work in terms of discovering the pain points here and delivering this in an iterative way. So it's been very exciting to see it come to life. And let's keep moving here. There we go.
Cool. Yeah, the next one is about sort of staying in the flow. I think from our conversations with researchers, we also heard about this review flow. So researchers are reviewing a number of participants, trying to make their decisions, whether they're doing quick assessments or diving deep about a participant. We heard researchers basically not being able to stay in that flow because of the way our product was working. So we would break that flow. We would force researchers to go back to the participant table, find the next participant to look at, and then jump back into that review process. So what we're introducing here is just previous and next buttons to help researchers really move through that process more quickly. And I think a fun thing to note is this also respects filters. So if you narrow your participant list to a subset of participants based on specific criteria, and then you jump into review a participant, as you click next, it will only be showing you people who meet those criteria. So this works in tandem with some of the filtering stuff we're doing. And we've already seen a big increase in the number of participants researchers can consider in the same amount of time. So really excited about what this means for sort of helping researchers stay in the flow of reviewing participants.
Nice. These, I'm glad we started with all your stuff and people are excited about these. So it's always fun to hit some of the highlights that people have already noticed. Great to hear. And then I'll let you take this one away.
Yeah, so I think the last part of this is obviously researchers ultimately need to make an assessment about whether you're going to include this participant in the research that you're doing or not. And whether you're, like I mentioned in the last slide, whether you're doing that as a sort of initial assessment or you're making the final decision, we saw some friction when we were talking to researchers in the ability to do that work. Sometimes it's different information that matters. Sometimes researchers don't care about certain information. Sometimes they were missing useful context. So the work we're doing here is to really improve the readability of the profile itself. And we're going to be doing that in a couple of ways. So first, the characteristics, which is sort of the picture you see here on the left. We're going to be changing the way we organize characteristics, breaking it into chunks so that it's not all in one area. So we're going to be including demographic characteristics and professional and technical in separate areas so that if you don't care about one of those, you can sort of collapse it and ignore it while you're doing your review. We're also going to bring sort of better indications about whether someone meets or doesn't meet target criteria. So you can see here the little check mark. We're introducing a faster way for you to understand if a participant meets a criteria that you were targeting in the initial recruit. And then we're also going to be making some changes to the screener question. So if you switch over, JH. So I think we heard in the screener question, legibility was an issue, and then also some context was being missed. So here we're changing we're making some changes to the way that screener questions are organized as well, hopefully to bring more clarity. We're also going to let researchers see the answers that the participant didn't answer. So all of the options that were unselected are now visible. We heard researchers flipping back and forth between the screener and the participant profile to make their decisions. So we're bringing that context up front. And then we're also, similar to the characteristic information, going to be introducing a sort of pass criteria. So if a participant has successfully answered the question that has qualification logic built into it, and they do qualify, we're also going to be sort of helping you understand that more quickly. So everything here to basically help researchers make their assessments, either initial assessments or go deep more quickly. And we hope combined with the other things, we're again really speeding up the ability for researchers to find, review, and then ultimately choose participants for projects. So excited about how these things sort of ladder together as well.
I'll interject here with a question from Maureen, which I think maybe you've partially answered already, but give you a chance to go deeper. Her question is there any plan in 2022 to improve the skip logic for screeners? So maybe anything in addition to what you've already surfaced just now, and then comma, and maybe adding display logic. I'm not sure what she means by that, but maybe you do.
I'm not sure I know what the display logic here is either. And I think we're always taking feedback on the screener logic and skip logic. So I don't think any concrete plans on improving those yet, but I think always things we're considering as we look at improving this half, which I think is the back half. To make this better, there may be cases where we have to make some changes to the skip logic, but no concrete plans on our pod currently.
Heard. Thank you, Bella.
Cool. Yeah, we can follow up on some of that in a bit. Awesome. So that covers some of the most exciting stuff we've been doing on the logistics side. There's actually a lot of other cool experiments and discovery things that the team is doing, but we're not quite sure which of those are going to be moving forward yet. So we'll kill it there. But a lot of exciting work going on in that space, which we're really happy about. On the matching side, we have, as I mentioned, really been focused on. Uh-oh, the screen's starting to glitch out. There we go. The B2B matching space. And so in particular, how might we better match participants with B2B studies? And so this really goes two ways. And we think about Recruit very much as the marketplace dynamic, where obviously we need to get researchers, people that are a good fit for their needs and have the right professional experiences and backgrounds for the types of research they're doing. But also we want to make sure that these participants are getting matched with things that are interesting and relevant to them. So, if you're a doctor and you're getting invited to studies for firefighters or something like that, it's obviously not a good fit. And so we want to make sure that this is a really good match on both sides. And so we've been doing a couple things on the B2B front. The first and probably most obvious to anybody who is doing B2B research is moving to a structured job title list for both sides. And so we kind of did this quietly behind the scenes in a multi-step migration because it was a tricky problem to solve, where the participants were selecting from this list initially. And now we've introduced it where researchers can select from that same list, which has been really exciting. And we've seen some really good improvements and outcomes since that introduction. So if you look at our data from September to October, we're seeing that we're finding more qualified participants who are a good fit for researchers on these B2B studies in that first 24 hours of when a project goes live. And again, we really think about matching from a speed perspective because I think that tells us a lot about the efficacy of the system. And so just an example here in terms of, when you search product, all the different options you can see, and not rocket science, people picking from the same list makes it easier to make a match. So we're very excited that we've cracked that. The other thing that we did introduce is that this field is not required, because we also have another field called additional requirements, which would be required. So you have to do one of the two. But basically making sure there is some space for researchers where, hey, I'm recruiting people for a professional study, but I actually don't care about their job title. I care about what software they use, or I care about what department they're in. And so we want to make sure there was still a flexible space for those use cases as we move to this more structured list so that we can continue to pull in those requests and work to fulfill them. So that's kind of the evolution we've had here on the B2B side. We're doing a lot more here. So we've been doing a lot of discovery research with people running B2B studies. We've looked through a lot of our own data in our systems in terms of, we have thousands of B2B projects that we've fulfilled over the years. What types of criteria are people targeting on? And we realize that it's much broader than just job title, and there's other structured data we can bring in to help this targeting work even better. And so an example here is around seniority. So maybe you don't actually care, what someone's job title is, what department they're in. You just need to talk to people at like a director or VP level, because you need people who can make budget decisions or are involved in hiring processes. And so we're going to be introducing a concept soon around seniority. We're also looking into skills and occupation groups as well. So skills, you can imagine, right? Maybe you don't really care what software engineering title somebody has. You just need somebody who is very fluent in React. And so, you want to put in that skill and then find people who are a good fit for, having a high fluency and knowledge of React or JavaScript or whatever it may be. And then on the occupation group side, again, sometimes you want to go super granular and sometimes you don't. We hear that very clearly from researchers. So in addition to being able to have a product marketing manager, sometimes you just want, marketing and sales managers in that collective group. And rather than having to select a bunch of specific job titles, we can make it easier for you by doing that through a single group that represents that entire category. And so there's a lot of things here that we're kind of like in the process of delivering and also continuing to research. So a lot of exciting stuff coming in respect to B2B matching. So
Jumping in with a question, Jake, from Lauren. How did we research and source the taxonomy for the structured job titles?
It's a good question. Part of the reason we took us a while to move to this was to find the right list that we felt like had enough breadth and was exhaustive enough to represent the right sort of options for participants. We heard from participants. We do research on both sides of our user base, and we talked to a lot of participants. And job title and how you define yourself is something that is pretty personal to people. Like having to pick something that's generic and not really how you would describe what you do for a living is not an experience people enjoy. So getting something that was exhaustive enough to give people like options that they're going to find and align with how they define their job was challenging, while also having it still be structured and finite and not having this endless open-ended list. And so we worked with a labor data firm that has a list that they maintain, and they I think quarterly will revise it a little bit. And so we've been using their API to pull this set of options in. And so they do that by scraping all these different job postings across different career sites and things like that, and then have a process on their side where they are looking for new emergent titles, cleaning things up, collapsing things. And so once we identified that sort of solution, we got really excited about moving this direction. So it was definitely an involved process in terms of talking to participants, talking to researchers, and then finding a list that worked for us. Cool. Cool. And so fraud is something obviously that I don't think I need to make much of a point of. I don't think people like it. We don't like it either. And obviously we want to make sure that this is not something that is happening on our platform. And the one thing I wanted to get into on this is just stressing that like it is very rare. When I joined the team, we joked about how low the volume was in terms of projects and participants. This is just something that's always been core to our value prop and our kind of DNA and a belief we have. Back then, as we didn't have a ton of participants joining the system, we actually had people internally on the team reviewing every participant that came in and like manually vetting their profile until we were able to put in some more sophisticated systems and checks. And so it's something that even from the earliest days of the company, we've always put a huge emphasis on making sure that the pool of our participants is high quality and legitimate. And so one thing I just wanted to call out with this is we actually do see that it's a rare occurrence at the moment. And so the data here is basically, if you think about all of the active participants we have in a typical month, and we define active by they've applied to a study, they've like raised their hand and said, hey, I'd like to participate. And that fluctuates maybe around 100,000 in a given month. We only actually see about 100 plus or minus fraudulent participants in that same time frame. So it's a really small percentage of the activity on the platform. And we feel like we actually have good signal there for a couple of reasons. One, every project that runs on our platform is supported by a project coordinator who is going through and looking at the participants coming in and helping the researcher make sure that we're finding people who are a good fit for their needs. And so they, in the course of doing that work, are able to spot profiles and responses that look suspicious, either people misrepresenting themselves or something about the account doesn't look right, and so they take a deeper look. And so we have that happening naturally in the course of fulfilling our projects. And then also we have all of the researchers who are very savvy and smart people themselves. And when they see something that doesn't look right, they tell us. And so we do feel like we have a pretty good signal on the people who are misrepresenting themselves and are bad actors on the platform. And it's not happening very often, which is great. The problem is what we found is that when somebody gets through and misrepresents themselves and has success, they find their way into a project, they get a confirmed spot. We see some clustering where now they know how to answer that screener. They figured out a way to make account that gets past some of our checks. They tell a friend, and now that project has a couple fraudulent participants. So while we have very few overall, there's now an experience on that one project that really is not a good experience, right? If you have 2 or 3 or 4 fraud participants on your project, you're not going to leave with a positive impression of how that went. And so what we did recently is we went back and we looked at all of those people who've been caught on the platform misrepresenting themselves and being bad actors. And we were able to identify some new heuristics and rules of thumb to reliably we believe catch over half of those cases. And so we're taking a problem that we already believe is, for the most part under control and not a prevalent thing in our platform. And it's something we feel really strongly about and been able to reduce that by, essentially half, which is a very significant improvement. So that's something we rolled out recently. We're going to continue to focus here. It's something that is always very top of mind for us. like I said, it doesn't happen often, but when we do hear these cases and when we have a researcher who has a bad experience on a project, we feel that we're very empathetic to that. We do not like that at all. We're working really hard to prevent it. Continue to report any accounts that look suspicious, and we'll continue to get smarter here. One thing I just do want to share on this is we intentionally don't share a lot about how we do these checks, because once that information's out in the world, it becomes easier for people to know how to get around them. And so I'm not intentionally trying to be vague here, but we also don't want people who are trying to thwart these systems and misrepresent themselves on our platform to have additional information to know how to do that. So that is kind of there's only so much we're comfortable saying, just to be transparent with everyone. Cool. On Hub, we got a couple fun things to share here. So let me hit some of these. One thing we did earlier this year in like the late summer, early fall, was we went out and we talked to a lot of Hub researchers, people who are using the product, and tried to understand, what pain points or points of friction they were encountering. And one thing we heard on a real consistent basis was inviting people to their project is in some ways like the tip of the spear. It's like their first chance to see if the project is going to work on Hub. They pull a list of their users in, they invite them to their project, and then they're like eagerly and anticipating like what kind of response they're going to get. Like, are my users going to come in here? Is this going to work? And then they also tend to think a lot from their own participants' experience and saying, what is the experience for my users? Like, they've never used this platform before in all likelihood. They get an email from me, and then that's their first touch point. That's their first experience with user interviews. Why are they or why are they not coming back in to apply to my study and participate with me? And so we really heard making that experience better was super important for a number of reasons. And so we did a couple things to help researchers on that front. The biggest thing that we heard throughout all of those conversations was, I just don't know what's going on with my emails. Like, I sent out 100 emails. Did they get delivered? Did they bounce? Have you not sent them yet? Does your system have a lag? Are people opening them but not clicking? Are people not even opening them? Is my subject line bad? And just that opaqueness was really, almost like anxiety producing. You want to know what's going on. You're eager to do your research. You've reached out to your own users, and you don't have much visibility into what's happening. And so we introduced the concept of invitation email metrics. And so now you can see, okay, these emails have been delivered, they're getting opened, but nobody's clicking them. So, maybe you want to do a follow-up reminder or some other intervention. Maybe you want to change your incentive. Different cases are going to call for different remedies. But just by having this data, we've heard from researchers really clearly that this helps make their lives a lot easier and gives them a much better sense of what's going on with their project. And so that was the first thing we did. And then the kind of follow-on that came out of that very naturally was, okay, well, I got a decent open rate, but I got a low click rate. And so I want to follow up and maybe change the subject line or make the invitation more clear about like what the commitment is. And so we now have an easy way where you can resend invitations to anybody who hasn't already applied to your project. So you just basically click this, go through a flow where you can adjust the subject line and the body of the email if you want for that reminder, and then just fire it off again. So there was ways to do that before, but it was not very intuitive. And I think kind of only power users had discovered it. And so we wanted to make sure that that was front and center. And so the feedback here has been really positive. Every once in a while, we'll launch features that before we work with Zoe and the marketing team to actually promote and tell people about. We'll see that researchers have discovered and just like will come inbound to us and like say thanks, and they're very appreciative. And this is one of those cases where we kind of quietly introduced email metrics, and then a few days later, we had already gotten a couple of notes from researchers who were super excited about it and making great use of it. And we're seeing that in some of the data. It's a weird one to kind of track for us as a metric or usage because the data is just there. You go to the page and you see the email metrics, but we are seeing people visit this page more regularly, which definitely kind of speaks to the hypothesis that they're going there to get this information because this information is valuable to them, which is great. So we're excited about all of those improvements. And then on Hub, the other area we are focused on is making sure that teams are able to comply with whatever privacy regulations they are beholden to. And so I'm not a lawyer, and I don't want to misrepresent anything to anyone, so I'm going to be careful with my language here. But obviously, if you're working with participants in California or Europe or these different places, there are increasingly different data protection rules and regulations that you need to be mindful of and keep top of mind. We hear, obviously, from researchers a lot of concern and questions here. A very ethical group of people who want to do right by their users and be respectful of the data. And so what we've delivered here is a couple things. One, we've had this data consent notice field for a while, which is basically anybody who's coming into the system that you haven't already put their data in the system, they're giving you their personal data voluntarily. If you configure this, they have to explicitly opt in and agree to the terms on how you're going to use the data for their data to come into user interviews and be stored in the system. The challenge with it was just kind of a plain text field. And so for teams that wanted to make this friendly and human readable so that people could actually understand what they were consenting to and what they were agreeing to, it was a little bit challenging to do that. And so what we did here was just introduce some richer formatting options. So now you can bold things, you can make bulleted lists, you can do nice clean links in line to push out to other resources that maybe you need to supply. And we've already seen some teams take advantage of this, which has been great. And so, a pretty straightforward change, but really impactful for the teams that are using this. And again, kind of doing right by the users, obviously making this stuff accessible and understandable for the people who are agreeing to these terms is really important. The other piece of this that we heard from some teams that are really thinking about this in a thoughtful way is that they need to be able to provide key information across the entire experience. So any page that their users interacting with, they need to make certain data or certain information available to them. And so the way we've solved this, which is coming soon, is by introducing this concept of a footer field where they can go in and with those same formatting options, drop in whatever they need to drop in. So again, I can't advise you what you should or shouldn't put in that footer because I don't fully know in all cases. But if you wanted to make sure that your privacy policy or your terms of service were always available to your users on any page they're interacting with on the user interviews platform, the footer field will be a great way to do that. And that should be coming out over the next few weeks here. So that'll be out soon. Again, this is just one of those things where for the teams that are subject to these regulations and working really hard to do right by their users and making sure that they're handling the data well, it's just like an absolute must-have. They're just like, we can't use things like this without these types of tools. And so we're really grateful that they've raised that, and we've been able to partner with them and figure out solutions that should solve that need. So a lot of exciting stuff happening here. And I don't know why it's doing this. All right. I don't know if there's any questions on any of that, Tucker, or should we keep moving to the 2022 stuff?
Keep moving.
All right. So what are we doing in 2022? Short answer is a little bit more because we're going to have a bigger team. And some of the stuff will seem pretty consistent because we think they're important areas to continue investing in, but we do have some new wrinkles to share with you all as well. So speak to that in a second here. So one of the biggest and most exciting changes for 2022, and Paulo, if you have anything to add to this, feel free to jump in, is that the logistics pod is going to shift their outcome a little bit to being focused on integrating with different testing tools. So we've always felt strongly from the way that we help researchers is we want to be testing tool and methodology agnostic. We want to be able to help with all recruitment needs, whether that be from our panel or from your own user base, and make those logistics really simple to do. But we do increasingly hear from different researchers that they want these tools to play together and to have a way to streamline how these things work. So, hey, if I'm pushing people to some unmoderated tool and they've completed the task in that unmoderated tool, it sure would be nice if that thing could just tell user interviews, that that's complete and I don't have to go in and take another manual step. Or, hey, if this could auto-generate the links I need for each individual person so I don't have to go copy and paste everywhere, that would make my life a lot easier. So there's a ton of use cases here. There's a bunch of reasons that we're excited about this, that researchers are excited about this. It should be great for participants as well. But that'll be a big new focus for us and a lot of questions to figure out, both technical and strategy and design-wise. But we're excited to dive into this area pretty much starting in January. So that'll be an exciting one to get into. The other kind of new focus area for us, and this is where as we grow the team and have a fourth, product development team, a pod to focus on different outcomes, we're able to take on some new initiatives. And the one here is around, we're calling it kind of team enablement. But basically, we know that certain parts of our experience right now actually can kind of degrade or get a little bit worse as teams become larger and more active. Like as you're doing more projects on user interviews, as you pull more of your colleagues into the platform to also use it, there's a couple rough edges in there that can get in the way. And obviously that's not great for us. It's not great for teams. These are the teams, we really want to champion and make sure I have a great experience. They're coming in here. And we know research is a team sport. We hear from just lots of people that, I need my colleagues to be in there with me because it's something we're doing together and it's a very collaborative environment. And so we're gonna have a team that is focusing on making sure that these large active teams are actually getting a better experience. And again, it's one of those things like if you think about it just strategically or in a kind of a generalized way, as you're in there doing more things, you're creating all these additional artifacts that should be reusable, like should be making your lives easier because you have all these questions that you can pull from, you have all these participants that have been contacted in the past. There's all these cool things you should be able to do. And right now we don't support that in the best way. Otherwise, though, we have two areas that are staying largely the same, but a couple nuanced things to talk through. So for the matching area, we are going to focus this a little bit more on like the supply-demand balance to make sure the participants are having a great experience, so we're able to retain them and keep them happy as our demand continues to scale up. We want to make sure that those things are setting us up to develop a system that works really well for everybody. And the other piece that we're going to change here, which I think will be exciting to folks, is today we've largely had matching focused on getting qualified participants, so getting people who meet all the criteria really quickly. And then, as Paulo described earlier, his area has been focused on taking those qualified people and actually getting them reviewed and approved. What we're going to do in 2022 is we're going to have the matching area take from application, so like when somebody applies to a study, to approval. So they're going to own that slice of the funnel, so we're going to broaden it a little bit. And the reason we're doing that is we realize that the handoff point between qualify, review, and approve, being separated across two different teams, makes it hard for us to address certain types of challenges and problems. So if you think about like quotas or making sure you have the right mix, that's kind of split across those two teams, and it makes it a little bit hard for us to figure out how to address. I'm sure people in the product development space have heard of like this concept of like Conway's Law, where you sometimes can ship your org chart. And so the way that we had that set up wasn't giving us a clear way to solve some of those problems that we hear often and we are eager to address. So we think by changing matching's focus a little bit in 2022, we're giving that group license to go figure out some solutions to some of those types of problems, which will be really exciting. And then the last piece is Hub. Not a big change there. We want to continue to make the best solution for running research with their own users. The piece that we are going to lean into a little bit with marketing and others is just making sure everyone's aware of how they could be taking advantage of Hub and how it could help make their lives easier. We've learned that some researchers haven't fully kind of wrapped their head around like what it is and how they might be able to make use of it. So we want to make sure that the awareness piece is something we're focusing on. And then just from an adoption standpoint, that's really just about usability and making sure we're solving all the right use cases. So obviously there's a lot to unpack there, but those are kind of some of the areas we're focused on. And I think we got some questions. So
we do. JJ, you're fast. I don't know if you can do 7 in 2 minutes, so we'll go a little extra here.
Sure.
Number one is from our favorite West Coaster, Kelly Starr, who asks, are there any plans for B2B to verify who they are? Maybe email verification or mandatory LinkedIn as part of their profile.
Yeah, that's something I think we'll continue to explore. I know Paulo, some of the approval work and discovery you're doing, we're talking about like, should we have people provide a voice recording or video recording so we can stick it on their profile so people have more confidence. LinkedIn is another obvious one. We actually do, we have started to collect work emails from some participants as an experiment behind the scenes so that we could, display that on their profile. So if somebody's saying, they work at Google, you could see that they have a Google email address and feel more confident there. So a handful of ideas that we're exploring there, but no definitive commitments, but very much understand that would make review and approval much faster, which we're excited to try to solve.
Thanks, H. From Victor, when selecting B2B targeting options, do you have any plans to help customers understand estimated audience that falls into this targeted criteria? And he gives a helpful example. Sometimes we want to talk to chief X officers, but if we knew that there's a very limited audience, we might go to VP or director.
Yeah, that's a great question. In one of the earlier talks, something we shared was that we did a large infrastructure project to revamp some of our matching technology behind the scenes, just because the scale of our data, having millions of applications and hundreds of thousands of participants, our systems weren't keeping up with that. The cool artifact of making that change to this more performant, sophisticated system is that internally, actually, we know when every project launches, how many participants are going to be eligible for it. And so now that we have that data point, which is very new for us, we are thinking about ways to try to pull that in more dynamically to the researcher side of the experience. So that as you're setting different characteristics, this is going to reach a wide pool of people, this is going to reach a narrow pool of people. And so that way there's that feedback loop for people to adjust their criteria and have some flex as Victor described. So again, no exact promises or commitments there, but actually really recent for us to be able to do that kind of real-time calculation and feedback. And so we're excited to figure out how to deploy that in a way that's helpful.
Worth noting, Jade, that we are now having our project coordinators who launch projects update and notify researchers if we have very low confidence that we can find who they're looking for. If we have that low confidence, we're going to let researchers know at launch versus after trying for a week. So we're doing a better job of sharing that signal to researchers, but still relatively manual. Thank you, Victor. From Neil. Love that we have email metrics now, but could we also have a way to match the metrics to the particular invite text or batch that was sent? As researchers tinker with subject lines, et cetera, between batches, it becomes impossible to see which versions produced which rates because it all gets aggregated.
That is a great piece of feedback. I don't know offhand. It was not a cool thing as the team's gotten bigger is that I don't know how everything works anymore, which has been great. I used to be in the details of everything. So I actually don't know what's possible in terms of how we're storing and logging that data. So I'll share that with the team and pass it along. But it's a great insight.
Yeah, love that from Neil. Thank you. Victor asks, I haven't used Hub yet. When inviting our users to Hub, are they being invited to the user interviews panel or our own panel so that no one else can access them?
Yeah, great question. So that's part of this like awareness and adoption piece that we're really excited to lean into. But it is totally separate. So it's a private pool of people. If you have a person who's in our audience and in your Hub, like those are actually separate records. Like we don't even mix them in that regard. So nobody else would have access to them. It's totally your pool of participants to contact. In terms of the participant experience, that's something we've actually heard a lot in our Hub research is people want to be able to go through and preview what the experience would be for their users. And so there's some ways you can do that and our team can help you from like a customer success standpoint. But I think in 2022, that's something we'll probably lean into productizing so that there's a way to go through and kind of preview and demo what the experience is because we've heard that a bunch. So great question.
Thanks, H. From Lauren, any info on which research tools you're currently planning on integrating with? Lauren, this is a hot question internally as well.
Lauren, which ones would you like us to integrate with? We're in discovery mode. I can't, I don't know. Please let us know.
Jade, let's jump to the question you've got up here on the slide.
Yeah, so this idea of automatically tracking quotas and boosting outreach to groups that are feeling slower than others is very much like we've heard this problem so many times, and like we really understand it, and it's something that Paulo, you've poked out a bunch in your research. But we just felt like we didn't have the team structure set up in a way that was giving us license to go in and make some of the solutions we needed to make here. And so a big change in 2022 for that matching pod is to give them kind of like that fuller domain so that they can start to unpack how we can go about solving these types of needs and use cases. So I think this is very much on the radar. And again, I don't want to make promises, but I would be surprised if we don't come up with some solutions in 2022 that they're leaning into this area, because we're sort of intentionally redesigning the outcome area for that team specifically so they can take a look at these types of areas.
Awesome, Jade. Are there any other questions in this deck?
No, I think this is the only one that we got ahead of time.
Sweet. We'll take one more from Maureen, which is there a way to only recruit people that have a LinkedIn profile? I'm not able to access Facebook on my work computer, so LinkedIn is more important for us.
I think that's similar to some of the feedback we got earlier on the B2B side. So I think one of the things we're realizing is that there are things we need to do in terms of like targeting the right people in the network and putting the information in a scannable way, which is what Paulo and team have been working on. But there's also stuff that if we can pull in additional signals just on the profile generally to always have, like LinkedIn or other ways that researchers can triangulate on who somebody is, that in and of itself is very valuable. So I think that's as we look to make sure that people are able to review and feel confident in the people they found. We've heard it twice now in this call. We've heard it in some other calls as well. So that's very top of mind for us.
We are out of time. I'm putting my email and Hope's email in the chat. If you have anything else that you didn't get a chance to submit, we would love to hear those questions. We'll answer them and we'll loop in our better halves in Paulo and JH. Thanks all for being here. This is a pleasure. Look for Product Talk V5 or 2022 V1. Who knows? Coming next year. In the meantime, happy holidays and be well.
Cool. Take care.
Thanks all.
Thanks for hanging out with us.
Thanks, everybody.